fairs, horticultural programs, special events, field trips, weddings, private or corporate rentals, and much more. Call 727-551-3102 for more information. That's 727-551-3102. Sunken Gardens, 1825 4th Street North, right in the heart of Old Northeast St. Petersburg. Call 727-551-3102.
Hi, I'm PC, your predictably correct morning radio guy, and he's...
Not PC. He's Imus.
You know, my brand of morning radio is cheerful and jokey. What's your brand?
Imus.
But what's your brand?
Well, he asks people awkward questions and they try to avoid answering. It's fun.
But see, listeners really need to feel your brand.
Feel this. Imus, hotter than ever.
Are you crazy?
Heard the new Imus lately? On the stations of the Tan Talk Network. Catch Imus in the morning, right here. This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome, business leaders, or those that just want to become business leaders. You're listening to the Focal Point show on Tan Talk 1340. I'm your host, Gil Pinney, and my objective is to offer businesses some extra knowledge and hints on how to grow their business. I want every business owner to feel that they are happy and in control of their business, and the business leader gets everything from the business that he or she deserves. Our call-in numbers today are 727-441-3000. If you'd like to discuss any particular issue or problem you have, I also have my website, which is gilpinney.com, which is GILPINNEY. And feel free at any time to email me at gilpinney@yahoo.com. And if at the end of the show you would like to have some personal advice, you can call me on my cell phone, which is 727-537-9680. In any case, I'd love you to call into the show today. And again, that number, if you're not writing all these things down real quickly, it's 727-441-3000. You can, and also I have a newsletter. If you'd like to get that, please send that to the email address.
Would the cat get your tongue there? What happened?
Yeah, the cat got me tongue, yeah. I suddenly got tuck.
I thought I put it that. I did.
Anyway, if you'd like to get my newsletter, the May issue is out right now. I'm sure that you'll enjoy it. It has some very good tips in it, and you may be able to increase your leads and drive more customers to your door. To get that, just send me a note to gilpinney@yahoo.com. One additional note, in case you've missed a show or want to catch up on some of the principles that we've learned about over the past several weeks, you can download any podcast of previous shows at tantalk1340.com and click on the banner heading for podcasts. Then click and go to the link and then select the Focal Point with Gil show. And at that point, you'll be able to download the podcast onto your computer and listen at your leisure. Who am I? I'm Gil Pinney, your Focal Point business coach. Focal Point is a worldwide franchise based on the proven techniques of a guy named Brian Tracy. He's world-renowned for business improvement and sales expert with over 70 books to his name, and he's traveled the world over multiple times. I've had 30 years experience coaching in large companies with significant experience in operations, sales, and marketing. I truly have a passion for encouraging people to stretch, to reach to new heights, and I love to see the smiles of accomplishment on them and their family. And the other good part is we remove the fear from making changes and making big decisions. It makes it much easier for them. The purpose of the show is to use this passion to remove that fear and give the small business owner additional clarity, set goals, and improve faster. Now, during the past week, as I've told you many times, I speak with a number of different business owners. And this week, I kind of got a little diverted from talking about time management or team building or even thinking about exit strategy. These business owners started talking about sales agreements, leasing contracts, and supplier agreements. And when I asked them, well, who reviews these documents before you sign them? And I got two specific answers. One was, no one, we just sign them, or I just sign the agreement myself. I decided at that point we would discuss ways to preserve your business from any litigation disaster, and that's what we'll do today. Because do you think the company that's providing you with the agreement or contract is protecting their interest or your interest? Since they probably had an attorney draw that contract up, I'm sure that as your business coach, I'm going to recommend you have an attorney review that, and that you'll preserve your business and keep your business strong and healthy with the review of a contract by an attorney. So today's show is pretty well packed. We may not get to everything, but we will discuss how you can prepare your company to increase your security and reduce your legal risk. Our guest today is a gentleman named David Rummell. And David is an attorney in Tampa. He's been a lawyer since 1992 and has been practicing law in Florida since 2003. Dave earned his Juris Doctorate from Albany Law School of Union University in New York. Gee, there's people from New York here. I thought he was native-born Floridian.
I probably shouldn't tell him I'm from Massachusetts, right?
Oh, just wait. He also earned his graduate degree in taxation from Boston University School of
there
Law.
we go.
In 2010, Mr. Rummell started DR Law Center, a full-service law firm which helps individuals and businesses throughout the state of Florida. For businesses, the services he provides are business startup, expansion, and contraction consulting, contract preparation and review, and then federal and state, local tax defense. For individual areas of representation, he also does personal injury for vehicle crashes, slips, falls, school and park industry injuries, animal attacks and assaults, discrimination cases, harassment cases, and DUI and suspended licenses. DR Law Centers offers one free consultation in order to measure and see how well the two of you both fit and whether or not he can help you. So Dave can be reached at DR Law Center, that's drlawctr.com, or his phone number is 813-951-1164. And are you there, Dave?
Hi, Gil. I'm here.
Hey, good to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you for having me today.
You're more than welcome. I hope I gave the proper introduction for you and that you are on target.
Other than bashing my Northeast roots, you did great.
I wasn't bashing them. It's just it's a shock to hear that somebody's from the Northeast that comes down to Florida. I think you must be one of what, 10 people?
No, Florida's beautiful.
That's correct.
Don't have to endure the cold, so.
That's correct. What was I going to say now? I lost my train of thought. Sheesh, you Northeasterners do that with me.
Take your time.
If anybody has any questions during the show, please feel free to call in at 727-441-3000. We'll start by dealing with some questions regarding risk, particularly in the workplace, and how you safeguard your workplace and avoid visitors causing an issue with either injury or false claims, and patrons the same way, and then also employees. Dave, when we read your biography, your specialties are both business law and personal injury. That's a very unique and special combination. So from your perspective on both sides of that fence, what do you recommend a business owner do to minimize his risk of an employee theft or false injury claims, like some of those scam artists that march around from building to building doing that? So give us your thoughts on that.
Sure. It's a great question because it's funny. In my business, unfortunately, I come across people maybe 5 to 8% of the time, possibly even 10, where I identify them as being less than genuine, meaning they're not being honest. They're possibly perpetrating a fraud or something. And so that's why I do an intake and take my time in a consultation to try to weed those people out. Can't represent people if they're not telling the truth. And so what I've seen, and I think is a really great thing, is video, streaming video. video and trusted employee monitoring. Obviously, video is the best thing because it's hard to actually refute what you can see and hear on a video. It catches people in the act, and also can act as a deterrent. People may think to go somewhere else to perpetrate a fraud, to steal merchandise or what have you, and it can also cut down on liability in a real accident situation where there's no fraud, but it's an actual, true accident within the business. And I can mention a little bit about that later because it depends on Florida law.
Okay.
And if I can give a story, recount a story about it. I had probably the most entertaining story I had read or have encountered is one I actually read recently, and it happened in one of the big chain retailers. And there was a woman, a shopper in the store, and this is all caught on video. She lays down on the floor. She grabs a lot of boxes and merchandise and puts them all over her body. And then she starts screaming. She's writhing in pain and screaming for help. Her husband then comes over. He probably was only a few feet away. I couldn't tell from what I had read, obviously. But he came running over. He was also screaming for help. And fortunately for this particular business, they had video which caught everything. And they had whoever was monitoring the video at the time saw it all happen as it happened. So they sent their managers out and said, they wanted them to come have a discussion because they wanted to discuss what they saw in the video. And of course, those people, they ran off probably to try someplace else. But that was a situation where this particular retailer could have been involved in a lawsuit, could have had to spend monies defending the lawsuit or have it impact their insurance. But the presence of their video surveillance and their security team watching the live feeds, it headed all that off at the pass. So they didn't have any problem with that. And that's a great one. And I had a few clients come into me, potential clients come into me recently. They were in the same bus and they were in an accident in Hillsborough County. And I interviewed I have multiple parties in a same accident. I interview them separately because I want to get each of their stories to make sure that they're being as genuine as possible. And it was funny because they would get up and separately, and not within each other's view, one after another, their stories were identical, 100%. They even stood up, spun around a few times, and talked about how they fell when they got out of the bus. And the reason I bring up a bus, because a bus company, that's a business as well.
Yep.
And so it really is. If you have an opportunity as a business owner, and I chose not to represent those, the bus passengers, by the way. But if you have an opportunity as a business owner, and if there's more than one party, you can ask to interview each party separately and take notes or take video if they'll allow it. And they might not allow it, but you can at least try. And it's easy to catch discrepancies or obvious fraud. And here, the bus company could have interviewed each party at some point. I don't know because I didn't stay in the case. But as a business owner myself and as a lawyer, I can't be involved in helping perpetrate frauds and things like that. So I don't know if that answered a little bit of your question.
No, that was a great response. It does bring to mind, though, those that want to commit fraud against your business. Having that video is almost the only evidence you're going to have, because if it becomes a he said, she said, you're in deep trouble. And if you get an attorney on the other side that's not as, I don't want to say, as owner-friendly or as conscious of what perpetrating a fraud is for, and they may just need to go after the money.
Well, absolutely. And video is good for a host of reasons. It's not just for catching fraud from customers, but it catches employees doing things that they shouldn't be doing, whether it's theft, whether it's vandalism within the business by a disgruntled employee. And it can also be, assaults in a business. That's very helpful to the police department. If you could provide a video, someone cold cocks somebody else, and then they argue self-defense, and you have a video that can help out the true innocent party. That's a big thing. And another thing, like I had sort of mentioned quickly, was in Florida. Florida is a comparative law state, and what that means is if you have an injured party and they're partly liable for their own injury, they can still recover, but then the other party. So let's just say you're in a store that sells furniture, and you have a customer comes into that store, and they're running through the store and they trip. Okay, they're running where they shouldn't be running, and and they trip. So they're partly responsible for that. But, if when they're interviewed, if there's no video, nobody knows that that person was running and contributed to the fall, it's possible, if he has $100,000 worth of damages, he's going to get $100,000 from that particular business or that business's insurance company. But with video would catch that, and now instead of paying out $100,000, it may be $50,000 or $40,000, depending on what percentage of liability really you can attribute to the person who was actually injured. So that's a really big thing. I mean, it can cut down liability in all areas, and also can reduce insurance premiums because you have all these protections in place.
Now, I do have to play devil's advocate a little bit here. What risk do you take with that security, and do you have to notify your customers that you have video security in place?
Well, that's a good question. I think you want to make video cameras, at least I think. Everybody has their own opinions on this, but I think you want to make video cameras and the presence of them obvious. Because if it's obvious, it's a deterrent, okay? If people walk into a store and they see a video camera up there, they're going to think twice and maybe decide, the store down the block doesn't have video cameras, so let's go there. Okay, as far as, where you place the cameras, clearly, and maybe this is for a topic for another show, but you can't put a video camera in a dressing room or a bathroom. Okay, I mean, it happens. Obviously, that's not legitimate. It's against the law. Shouldn't be done. But, as far as, notifying customers, there's nothing wrong with putting a sign up in the front for your protection and safety, or something a little more innocuous, just for to keep employee theft down or something. I don't know what you would put, but something to show that this store is protected and you're protected by video surveillance. I don't have a problem with having that shown.
Yeah, it's probably like the sign out front at a lot of houses where it says you've got specific type of security, and that deters the potential burglar from trying to knock on your door and see if you're home and sneak in the back.
Yeah, I was out doing lawn work this weekend, and I bumped into my ADT sign. It was there. Now,
still working on this the signs and video surveillance. What about sexual harassment charges? What do business owners, how can they avoid putting their business in legal harm's way? Does video also help with that, along with training and all the other good stuff that business owners need to do?
Sure. Well, I think video pretty much can help with everything, but with including sexual harassment, because if you have video showing the floor, you might catch someone being inappropriate and try to catch and stop them from continuing that behavior, give them a warning, what have you. Or if it's really serious, you fire the person. But I've actually represented quite a few clients in sexual harassment cases on both sides, and really, what's important is, like you had mentioned, training. It's very important to have some type of training, whether it's an in-house speaker or video of different scenarios of behavior which is appropriate or inappropriate. And along with the training, you should have a manual that sets forth behavioral guidelines. Not everybody coming out of school or those who didn't go to college or whatever have seen this. They don't know. They go from maybe they're normally in a party environment. Work should not be a party environment. So people don't necessarily understand what's appropriate or inappropriate. And so training is probably, to me, the most important thing to let people and help them understand what is right and what is wrong.
What in general is appropriate and inappropriate behavior, particularly, as we discussed when you and I were talking a while ago, what can you say and what can you not say?
Well, realistically, whether it's men talking to men talking to women, or women talking to women, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can't really comment on someone being sexy. You can't use words like sexy or you look really nice today, and it goes to tone of voice and the way you look at somebody. You have to make it more respectful. Maybe make believe that you're speaking to your mother or father or your children. Rather than you're in a nightclub and you're trying to pick somebody up. There's some. I mean, I had one case where one of the managers was texting one of the salespeople, and asking if they could come over and maybe have a drink at their place and maybe give her a massage. That's inappropriate.
Yeah.
Anything that would be considered unwelcome behavior by a reasonable person at the workplace, it just shouldn't happen. And at the same time, on the other side, I had a client who used to sign her emails "sexy lady." Well, that's really not appropriate either. So, everybody should really understand what's appropriate and what's not. Some things people do and say because they think it's funny, but you have to really temper your humor and try to keep it clean and wholesome, I guess, just to avoid any possibilities as far as what you say. But that's why the training and the behavioral guidelines and the employee manuals are really important. And I think you should also have some mention of sexual harassment compliance and probably an employee agreement or an independent contractor agreement as well.
Okay. Yeah, I guess sexual harassment's a little bit like beauty's in the eye of the beholder, except in this case it's more, harassment's in the eye of the beholder as well, because it depends on how somebody takes what you say, either in context or out of context. It can lead down the wrong path. And as a business owner, you've got to make sure you've got clear lines drawn to where what is and what isn't acceptable.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what sensitivity training is about, and all these videos that they put out on how to behave and what to say and what not to say. I mean, it's just a matter of really understanding it. And a lot of people may make what they would call harassing statements or comments to somebody else, and they don't mean it that way. They may have the best of intentions, but they're still going to get in trouble.
Yeah. And all of this around sexual stuff is equally applied to either racial or ethnic or religious or any
men and women. It doesn't matter what anybody is, black, white, purple. It doesn't make a difference. What religion doesn't make a difference. What sex they are. None of it matters. It's just about being appropriate and being respectful. And if you can just be respectful and make believe that's what I tell my clients. Make believe you're talking to your parents, but you're an adult talking to your parents, not a rebellious
not a teenager.
Not a rebellious teenager, but speak to your children, but not in a condescending way. Just keep it right. That's all.
Yeah, just make sure all your conversations are respectful, and
it
keeps
hard.
everything within bounds.
Yeah, and if you're interested in somebody, you also have to understand: is there a no fraternization policy at work? Are you allowed to even date somebody at work? Every company is going to have different rules, so you need to understand those rules too. I think it's dangerous to have people dating at work because of the potential sexual harassment issues that can result.
Yeah. Well, I think that's excellent advice for any business owner to make sure that when they're either starting their business or as they grow, to think about what boundaries they're going to set in their workplace, and make certain that when people step out of those boundaries that they know about it, either via the video routine or via just listening, overhearing conversations, to make sure that people are always in the right tone of voice and they're always respectful of their employees, because in the long run, the one that is really served best by that is the business owner, by taking that time up front to have that conversation both with the employees and within themselves, to write that all down, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable within their workplace as they begin their business, or even if it's been open for a year or two and they don't have those policies, to put those in place so that it's just not like reinventing the wheel for their workplace. There's, I would think, a number of websites that give you all that information basically either freely, or you can see what's acceptable and not acceptable based on case law. And there again, you can learn that from your attorney.
Yeah, and then you can also look at the EEOC and just go on. Yeah, there are government websites to go on, and they can provide guidance as well.
Exactly. Well, we've got about 20 seconds here, Dave, and then we're going to take a break. So I'll give your information one more time. Dave's phone number is 813-951-1164, and his website is drlawcenter.com. That's drlawctr.com. and we'll have much more to talk about when we come back from break. And thanks for calling in, Dave.
Thank you.
Hi, this is John Austin, host of the Book Club on the Tan Talk Radio Network. I spent 35 years in publishing, and today I want to tell you about a book that can change people's lives. The book is No Cash, No Problem, and the author is Dave Wagenford with Ali Pervez. Dave Wagenford is one of the greatest barter experts in the world, and he's bartered over $500 million worth of goods and services. Do you want to remodel your house, but the cost is just too high? Or maybe there's an automobile that you've dreamed of owning, but thought you never could afford. This book will tell you how you can do both of those things, plus hundreds more with little or no cash and without going into hock for the rest of your life. Maybe you're a business owner with a cash flow problem that leads to low or non-existent profits. Read this book and see how you can increase your cash flow and your profits by time-proven techniques. The book again is No Cash, No Problem, and you can buy it now on Amazon for just $7.98 for the ebook edition. Do yourself a big favor and buy it today.
Hi, this is Patsy with a Z. Have you written a book, or would you like to write one? Join me every Tuesday morning at 11 for Joy on Paper, a program for writers and those who dream of writing. We will discuss how to stay motivated, software that makes your work easier, and the best ways to break into the mysterious world of agents and publishers. Join me, Patsy Gill, every Tuesday at 11 on Tan Talk Radio for Joy on Paper.
Anchorage, be patient. Halifax, hold tight. Prague, Spokane, and Markham, you're just gonna have to wait. We know you miss your boys, but they have no intention of returning before they bring home the Cup, the Tampa Bay Lightning, be the Thunder. The 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs are on sale now. Visit TampaBayLightning.com.
From the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's Tan Talk.
Welcome back. You're listening to Focal Point on Tan Talk 1340. I'm your host, Gil Pinney, and we are talking with attorney David Rummell, and we just completed discussing how you make your business more secure with video and what the legal ramifications are and how to make sure that your business is in the right place with respect to security. And the video helps you gain the evidence that you need in order to make sure that if something does go awry, you've got the evidence to show that what exactly went on. So welcome back, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we feel more secure in what we're doing in our day-to-day and our risk reduction, let's talk about contracts, because that's what led us into this discussion, because as I was talking with other business owners, they started telling me, oh, I just signed a contract, and that's why we began our discussion. And it's probably not a great idea just to Google and find the closest attorney. So why don't you tell me what your philosophy is and what you do based on fees and retainer for your clients, and how you make sure that it's the right fit?
Okay, as far as fees go, in the personal injury arena, most of that work is typically done on a contingent fee basis, and what that should mean, and not all lawyers hold to it strictly, but what it should mean, and the way we treat it is, if we don't get anything back for a client, a recovery, then no matter how much work we've performed, whatever expense we've incurred in representing our client, we don't get anything. They don't owe us even a penny. So if, for example, someone is in a car accident and it turns out that we couldn't get them any type of settlement, or we went to court and we weren't able to get any type of successful judgment for them, but we've spent 5 months working on the case and incurred maybe $15,000, $20,000 in costs. That'd be a horrible situation. But if that was the case, and we were not able to get our client anything, they wouldn't owe us a penny. That's what a contingent fee means. And we typically, a contingent fee is usually 1/3, 33 1/3%. of what we get a client.
Okay.
And
business clients?
Well, and then for harassment and discrimination situations, we give our clients a choice to go with a fixed fee, an hourly fee, or a contingent fee. When you're going through a harassment or a discrimination situation, there's a lot of stress, and want to make sure we explain how what all the fees are and what it can all mean. So we just want to make sure that they're comfortable and and to know that they're being charged fairly, because they've already been treated fairly, or else they wouldn't have a harassment or discrimination situation. So we want to make sure that they're completely treated fairly and give them that opportunity. And then for business situations, it really depends on a business. If it's an upstart business, a new business, or a business that's expanding, and the way we do it is we'll sit down with the business at no charge for an hour or two to try to get a little bit of an understanding of what their business currently is and where they're going with it. What their goal is, their business plan, their model. And if we believe that it's something that we can help grow with them, maybe grow them and grow with them, then our rate, which is normally our rate, is $300 an hour, with an upfront retainer of $5,000 or so, depending on the scope of the work. But sometimes we'll waive the retainer to $0. If they're in the midst of cash flow currently being a problem, and we'll just grow with them. Sometimes we'll take a reduction in our hourly rate, and letting them know that they can increase it when they believe that we've earned the right to increase it. So it all depends.
Oh. Yeah. Well, that's great. Sounds a little bit like a business coach, where depending on what the future is for the business and what that business owner brings to that business, how much both help they need and what direction they want to take the business and how quickly.
Yeah, if we charge somebody too high a fee, when we understand that their business is they're in the formative stages, and cash flow, how businesses are within the first year or two, cash flow is critical, and it's very difficult. If we charge somebody too high a fee, we're going to end up driving them out of business, when our goal is to help them move forward and help them grow.
Good. That is the key in both of our viewpoints, is that the business owner feels confident both in our services, but that we're with them for the long haul, not just for the short-term success.
Exactly. We're not there to take the money and run. Exactly.
Right. Now, there must be a website or something out there that provides business owners with lawyers' credentials and successes. Do you know what that is? Is that something everybody can have access to?
Sure. Everybody has access to to the Florida Bar website. It's FLA, sort of like Florida, FLABAR, flawbar.org. And what that does, you pump in the name of an attorney, and it'll come up, like if you pumped in my last name, Rummell, it'll come out, it'll say my name, where I went to school, law school-wise, and degree beyond that. And it'll give the 10-year disciplinary history in Florida. So for lawyers licensed in Florida, it's going to say what that is. And if you look on mine, it's no disciplinary history. And there's also a phone number. I looked it up because I always like to, whenever I hand out a new contract, I also provide some things from the Florida Bar to my new clients, so that they know their rights when dealing with an attorney, because a lot of people have never dealt with an attorney before. And so the Florida Bar number, and I believe this is the right number, I looked it up yesterday, is 850-561-5600. Now, just looking at that isn't going to give you, everything about somebody. It's possible that, a lawyer did something less than ethical and just wasn't caught yet. So, but at least you can get access to any attorney that's licensed in Florida, and at least for whatever the Florida Bar is aware of, you can see that disciplinary record.
Yeah.
It also talks about what areas of expertise they have. So if you're looking for a business lawyer, I think you can also sort and possibly may be able to sort by type of law as well.
Well, that's a great piece of information that any of the listeners that are either in business and don't have an attorney that need one or somebody that's got an attorney that they're thinking, hey, maybe this guy's not as good as I thought he was. They have a place to look and know and verify that either their feelings are correct or they're incorrect, or find an attorney that works well with them.
Yeah, I think people that don't have an existing attorney, that unless they're super happy with their existing attorney, if you're going to go to somebody new, there's no reason not to check that attorney out to make sure that they don't have an obvious disciplinary record.
Yeah, well, it's also good information for the business coach to tell people that that's a good place to look to find an attorney, or, as we've talked about, refer them to you.
Sure.
Now, your philosophy is great. I really enjoy that you want to be there as a long-term successful build a long-term successful partnership with that business. Now, in that partner role, what should the attorney do with respect to the business, and start with contracts, and we'll start with lease and rental contracts for property and property and equipment. What dangers and kind of what are the watch outs for the business owner?
Well, with regard to, if I could just say, with regard to all contracts first before addressing maybe lease
sure.
contracts or property and equipment. Any contract that is going to be entered into by a business, you always hear, make sure you read everything, all the words in the contract. You've heard that, Gil?
Yes.
Okay. Well, reading it is just one small part of it. Much more important than reading a contract, and it sounds obvious, but maybe it's not, you have to understand the contract. And remember, contracts are written, typically they're written by lawyers for a different party. Unless your lawyer wrote the contract, you're reading a contract that the other side has written, has drafted. And when a lawyer drafts a contract for his client, sometimes they put things in there, or often they put things in there that are beneficial to only their client and not necessarily as beneficial to you, the other business owner. So when you're reading these contracts, if you're not an attorney who hasn't written and read hundreds or thousands of contracts, there may be things in there that you don't even know are pitfalls, and that could cripple your own business if you don't address them properly. There could be existing provisions that are going to kill you, or they're going to be provisions that are absent. You don't see them, but they should be in there to protect your interests. So that's any type of contract you're going to get into. You have to read it, of course, but you have to truly understand it. And I don't know how easy it is to understand a contract unless you have an experienced attorney that deals with contracts. Okay?
Yes.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, it clearly makes sense in the overall. So go ahead.
Okay.
Keep on going. You're on a roll here, pal.
Okay. As far as leasing, I think you had asked about leasing or rental contracts for property and equipment?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in my experience, some of the important things that can hurt somebody, or that have to be in there or not be in there. It's an attorney's job to make sure that his client or her client understands and makes it clear that, obviously the biggest provision in there is for payment, right?
Yep.
If you're leasing something or renting something, you have to pay. So you have to make sure and understand what is the complete payment due, how you pay it, where it goes, method of payment. And as far as complete payment due, it's not necessarily just rent. There may be things in the contract where rent is obvious, but then are you responsible for taxes? Are you responsible for insurance? Those can be quite sizable expenses that if you're just looking at the contract or just thinking about it, you might not catch all that. And instead of paying $2,000 a month as a rental payment, all of a sudden your expense is $3,500 a month. And that could be the difference between a business surviving and blowing budget and failing. So those are some big things to understand and look at in a lease or rental contract. Also, how to terminate the agreement. I mean, I reviewed a commercial real estate contract, and it was a pretty standard one, but my client didn't understand. Like, for example, going back to the money, and I can't really emphasize this enough because it's so important. It goes back to cash flow and being able to just float and survive as a business. Mm-hmm. My client didn't understand in that one that in addition to the base monthly rent price, the landlord was passing through. It was a pass-through clause on real estate, and he didn't know what pass-through meant. So he was he would have ignored it if I didn't have an opportunity to review it. And it also required an X dollars of liability, and it also required liability insurance, also insurance for a structure. So if you're talking about property, real property, or tangible property like equipment, you have to worry about the different provisions there as well. And so that's pretty much it for lease and rental. I mean, those are the biggest things. Just making sure you understand what you're going to be paying, what you're responsible for, making sure taxes and interest and whether it's structural, what have you, and insurance, all those things are covered, and making sure you understand how you can terminate or get out of that contract, what the length of period of the time is for the contract, and what happens if the facilities you're leasing has some type of catastrophic problem with it, or there's some type of plumbing problem with it, or there's a sinkhole or something. Can you get out of that contract in those situations and go find someplace else? And are you covered and then you can get insurance proceeds in order to get into your next place? Those are the big things that I've noticed in my time.
Oh, that's great information. Absolutely great. It's particularly the part about the pass-through where if you are naive about something like that and you basically think you're only paying whatever the rent number that's written in the contract, and there's a phrase in there about a pass-through this and a pass-through that, if you don't know exactly what that means, you'll blow right by it and think you're doing the right thing, and you'll end up on the short end of the payment stick.
Yeah, and it's devastating. It could actually kill a business.
Yes, for short and long term. Because if you can't afford it up front and you have to go out of business, you're still paying that because you signed that contract for whatever the term of the contract is.
Most likely.
Yeah. So, not the right thing. That's why we have you on the phone today, because it scared the heck out of me what those guys were just signing and not paying attention to. What about supplier contracts? And that's where you're buying merchandise from somebody, and what risks and what liabilities do you have there that are probably different from a lease and rental contract?
Okay, so like a vendor contract,
yes.
Supplier, vendor for your business. I had and still do. I have a client that owns a clothing business, and they have to get their clothing from various suppliers, different types of clothing, whether it's jackets or pants or what have you. And they had received a contract from their supplier or their vendor, and that I reviewed, and it was for selling clothing to my client for resale. But that supplier wanted to be the exclusive supplier for certain types of clothing.
Sounds touchy.
Well, in exchange, for being exclusive, they provide marketing services with it, and potentially a lower price. But it's still exclusive. Now, in that contract, there were no clauses which would have allowed my retail client to purchase from other suppliers in the event a shipment was delayed. So, what would happen if this exclusive supplier couldn't provide the clothing? What's the clothing store going to do? What are they going to sell if they don't have clothing to sell? Quite problematic. So I pointed that out. We were able to modify the contract before my client signed the contract. It was a great price for my client, but something like that part where there was no way of getting out of that exclusivity, even in dire times, that would also preclude my client from making any money, generating revenue, paying expenses, and therefore potentially going out of business. So things like that. When you're talking about supply, exclusivity contracts, you always have to be wary of. You have to make sure you understand how to deal with that in the case something doesn't come. And then the other thing is making sure if you have product that you're purchasing that maybe is tainted, there has to be some type of quality control provision in the contract. You have to be able, in all contracts you're allowed to inspect your goods and then send them back if they don't pass inspection, and then the supplier has the ability to cure or fix the problem. But you have to look at the days and how you deal with that time lag if you do get a bad shipment. So those are all things that, in order for me to be able to provide guidance in something like that, I have to truly understand their business and how it all flows. What's their high times? Their busy times. Do they have a busy season or a slow season? all these things, the attorney has to, if they want to provide good value to their clients, they have to truly understand the client's business.
Great answer. Now, the next one, it's staffing company contracts. What are the real dangers there? You know, everybody needs to bring people in, and many times you use a staffing company because they have access to a lot of staff on short-term or on short notice that you can bring people in. But what about those contracts? What risks are there? Or not necessarily risk, but benefit/risk.
Well, the use of a staffing company can be great. I mean, if you need employees, the staffing company can bring, hopefully, the right type of skilled employee to your doorstep, pretty much. And you can sort of try them out potentially, depending on the contract. Remember, when you're working with a staffing company, the contracts are drafted by the attorneys for the staffing company just about all the time.
Yep, that's true.
If you have a staffing company, while it can be a great way to get good people to work for your business, you have to understand, if you have the business, you're obtaining these workers from the company, and you might want to hire some of these workers at some point. Because when you're paying a staffing company, you're paying for those workers, but you're paying at a little bit of a premium because you're paying the staffing company, and the staffing company is paying the workers. So the staffing company has to make some money. So if you find somebody that's really good out of the people that they provided you and you want to hire them, can you do it? Now, I have a client that she is an IT engineer, information technology, works with computers and servers and all that. And she was on a staffing company contract. She was being loaned out to a big computer company. And this big computer company wanted to be able to hire her directly. And there'd be a lot of benefits being hired as far as, potential 401k, health plan, all those fringe benefits. But she wasn't allowed to go there based on the contract till after a year as working as a staffing company employee. So what we were able to do is work something out whereby if she was willing to modify what she was getting for the next 6 months, we just worked it out to sort of settle that, to make it a 6-month situation. Mm-hmm. She took a little bit of a reduction for 6 months in pay in order to get to it was basically her dream job. She wanted to get to this computer company to be an actual employee. And she wanted to get there before the computer company hired somebody else. So that was an example of the employee or the contractor trying to get into the company. And it's the same on the other end. The company wanted this particular worker and maybe didn't want that worker to possibly go work for another computer company when they can get her. So it's those are just some of the things to consider when you're entering into a contract. Any ways to reduce the time in which they have to work for the staffing company, or if there may be a buyout, like you hear in sports all the time. Mm-hmm. Can you buy out their contract? Those are just some of the things that I've seen are the important things with a staffing company contract.
Okay. And the same on the other end, if it's not working out, what are the liabilities to have that employee, have the staffing company replace that employee?
Well, that's usually easy. No, and the staffing company contracts that I've read, most of them have been really good with that. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember any that haven't been good with that. But it all allows the the business owner, to be able to make a complaint, explain why that particular worker isn't acceptable, and they'll swap them out.
Ah. Okay. Well, let's review where we're at, because we've covered a lot. Well, the only thing we did not cover is an employee contract that's written and you're hiring an employee. So there I would think the business owner would always use an attorney or at least a labor law attorney to write those contracts. Would you agree?
They should definitely always use an attorney, but sometimes people will get a form off the internet and then just hire somebody. And they think they maybe have an employee based on the contract when they really have an independent contractor, or vice versa. They want to have an independent contractor, so maybe they don't have to, contribute, withhold taxes and things like that. But really, they have an employee, And then if you have an employee, all of a sudden you have to deal with the Florida Department of Revenue, the reemployment tax liability, used to be called unemployment tax, and then the federal unemployment tax liability. Florida Department of Revenue determines, an employer considers an employee to be anybody who is subject to the will and control of the employer as to what must be done and how it is done. Whereas an independent contractor is not subject to the will and control of the employer, and the employer does not control or direct the manner or method of job performance. That's right out of the Florida Department of Revenue rules. And also, in an independent contractor, the general public has to be aware that the person is an independent contractor. There's a lot of case law on all that, and I've reviewed a bunch of these contracts. I've drafted a bunch of these contracts for businesses, and the ones that I've reviewed, they wouldn't have gotten the desired result for the employer almost all the time. There's a lot of case law out there, and you can really structure your contract to make sure you get the results you want as an employee or as an independent contractor, and then avoid the downfalls of the IRS coming after you or the Florida Department of Revenue coming after you.
Yeah. Well, great. Like I said, this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I hope our listeners have learned a lot. I did purposely stay away from the independent contractors because that is an area that I am both weak on, and the laws on that not necessarily are changing all that frequently, but there's so many different avenues and spider webs you can get caught up in with respect to the 1099 employees or the independent contractors that, our discussion was limited and away from that.
Right.
But just to review, we want to protect our business with some form of video monitoring system. It gives you great evidence should something bad happen, either in your business or around your business, and having the sign out front is great deterrence for potentially fraudulent claims. And the second point that was major in our discussion today is when you're looking for that attorney, have them make sure they're willing to be your business advisor as long as a legal authority and guide you in the right paths. So do you agree with both of those key points that we made today, Dave?
Absolutely. You want to have an attorney who listens to you, asks the right questions, and truly understands your business.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, we'll start wrapping up now. We've got a little over a minute and a half left in the show. And I want to thank you very, very much, David. Again, you can contact David at your leisure via 813-951-1164 or contact him at his website, which is drlawctr.com. That's drlawcenter.com. And anytime you need to get in touch with Dave for legal advice or consultation, please give him a call. And as far as our show goes, we are a business coach show, so what we would like you to do is give me a call for a free consultation at 727-537-9680. And please remember, like an attorney, a business coach can fit any budget and work with you in order to fit your time and budgetary constraints into a coaching program that fits best for you. We do one-on-one coaching. We do group coaching. We also do talks on revenue growth, goal setting, time management, strategic planning, and team building. Send me an email at yahoo.com. That's GILPINNEY at yahoo.com. And feel free to go to my website and look there as well. Those who email me will get a 30-minute phone conversation in addition to a 1-hour one-on-one coaching session. So there's no risk to you for either of those. Dave is also a no-risk situation, so please give him a call. And we are about to run out of time, so
thanks a lot
please
for
have
having
a great you're welcome, David, and have a great holiday next weekend, and we'll talk to you on June 2nd. Thank you very much.
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyr Hills, Tampa Bay. Listen.
Still looking at Amtrak, a biker gang war under investigation. I'm Ann Cates. The FBI has determined that damage on the windshield of the Amtrak train that derailed last week was not caused by someone firing at the locomotive. Correspondent Renee Morse has more on the probe.
A complete review of the black boxes, that has been done. So the NTSB has completed the analysis of that. So far, no indication of mechanical error, but an NTSB source is stressing that it is still too early to rule anything out.
170 have been arrested in Waco, Texas, and some